Hey everyone, welcome to another Untold Stories podcast. Today I have one of my best friends, 46 years we've known each other, Greg Thomas from Fort Lauderdale. We're going to talk about our days growing up together and some of the things we got away with and some of the stories, and also what he's been doing for 46 years, running private boats, fishing the Bahamas, giant bluefin tunas. Stay tuned. Well, Greg, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Glad to have you in here finally and talk about some of the stuff we got away with. Man, if they had cameras back when we were growing up.
You probably ought to turn these cameras off.
Yeah, we'd probably just be getting out right now.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, you know, we've known each other we were just talking about it. I was about 14 years old. You were a couple of years older than me. And we met at Bill Boyd's Bait and Tackle.
Yep.
And, you know, a young kid, I would go in there and look at the rods and the tackle. And my mother worked down the street at the phone company, so I'd hang out there and do things. And we got to know each other and started fishing together. And I remember neither one of us were driving at the time, but you got your license first and you got your first car. Tell me a little bit about that sporty vehicle back then. It was a classic, if I remember.
Well, when you turned 16 back then, unlike the kids today, the first thing you did on your 16th birthday was get your driver's license.
Yep.
And I know all that's changed now. And after you get your license, the next thing is to get your car.
If you don't already have it nowadays.
If you don't have it, you're right. So my first opportunity to get a car came about. My parents were separated, divorced, whatever, and one of the last times I saw my father, I bribed him into selling me the car he had, and it was a '68 Cutlass 4-door, and it cost me $200 and a 6-pack of beer to get him to sign the papers over before he forgot. And I was off and running after that, and the trunk was a live bait well.
Yeah, well, the back seat became a cooler as well as the bait well, and it was it, if I remember right, it was rusted out and pretty poor shape from the get-go.
Yeah, it wasn't going to win any awards at the car show, but
it didn't stop us.
No, you could put a lot of fishing rods in that car.
Oh yeah, and mullet and bonitas in the back of it.
Speaking of bonitas, do you remember the bonita that was left in the back of that car?
Yeah.
Because you had to go motorcycle riding and break your leg, and we were going to the Keys shark fishing.
Well, you forgot about it in the trunk?
You forgot about it.
No, I couldn't do anything about it because I was in the hospital.
I was taking care of all the other stuff.
Well, if you look back, how that car made it to the Keys and back, I don't know how many times we would do that. We would get a wild hair and go, let's go to Bahia Honda and go snook fishing. The tide's right.
Yep.
We'd leave Fort Lauderdale. We'd drive down there, middle of the night, come home early in the morning.
Yep.
And I'll never forget telling my mother that we were going to Bahia Mar Bridge.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't tell her Bahia Honda in the Keys. She would have had a fit.
Right.
So we told her Bahia Mar Bridge. So we were kind of half right. We weren't totally lying. And we would
just a little bit.
We would drive that thing down here, and I remember, I don't think the air condition worked because the windows were always open.
No.
And you had a Pioneer 8-track. That you would take out of the car when we would go somewhere because you were afraid somebody was going to steal it. Worth more than the car.
That radio cost more than the car.
Exactly. That was the crazy part.
Yep.
Then you got the cassette player. But we would drive that car, and how my feet didn't go through the floorboard, I'll never know because the thing was rusted out.
Yep.
And having the bait well in the back rusted it out even more. But well, I'm sure with the bonitas it wasn't.
It didn't matter.
It just fit right in.
Yeah, it didn't matter. It worked. It got us to where we wanted to go, and thankfully we didn't break down anywhere either. So
we did break down, but somehow if we opened all four
oh,
doors
yeah,
and we
I
moved
forgot.
some stuff around, the car would start. So it had a mind of its own.
Yep.
But it didn't leave us stranded anywhere, which was amazing. And it's funny you talk about that, the crash on the motorcycle. When I was a kid, farting around and wasn't really doing anything, and Joe Thuma
That's right.
was on another
Joe
motorcycle,
Thuma.
and he just kind of rolled into me where we were, and I broke my femur, and that was a crazy moment of what had happened. And I was in the hospital, but it's funny you remember that,
Yeah.
because I think we were going either that
We were going that
afternoon or
evening.
that,
I think, yeah, because I remember you called me from the hospital and you said you were in the hospital. And I said, well, just hang on, I'm going to come get you.
Yeah.
And you explained that you couldn't get out. And
Yeah.
I said, I don't care, we're going. But then, things changed and we kind of forgot about the Bonita. And I think I went to school for a couple days after that. And then
With
finally,
the Bonitas.
yeah, then I realized that the Bonita was still there.
Well, that's and the mullet that we would put in that thing, we would go catch mullet and go snook fishing or go to the ponds and catch shad
Yeah.
to go to the spillways.
Absolutely. We were fortunate to be able to have a vehicle to do what we did, because you were the only person I knew that I could call in a heartbeat and say, let's go to the dam, let's go to the bridge, let's go to the pier, let's go. And you'd go.
Oh yeah.
Drop everything and we would go. And all it mattered was we were going, we were fishing. And like you said, going out to the locks at Palmyra and netting shad, and then running back to the other lock at Cypress Creek
Yeah.
and going across the rail, parking on the railroad track, going across the rails, over 2 fences to get into the lock
Yeah.
and fish, and then walk down in someone's backyard when you hooked a big one to land it because of the current.
You imagine how that would go over now?
And you can't do that now. I mean, we were fortunate to be able to do that kind of stuff at the time. And, I tell my sons these stories, and they look at you like, how come you're still not in jail?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because, there were, back then you fished in people's backyards on the seawalls, and, it was good. You weren't bothering anybody and nobody cared. And
you weren't a threat.
exactly.
And people would come out and talk to you. Hey, what are you catching? What are you doing?
Yeah.
And it was just so different, and we didn't really think much about it like we were trespassing or, doing something wrong. We were just fishing.
Right. And even, like early in the morning, like when we would fish, say, Hallandale Bridge, early on the tide for snook in the morning, and then once it got light, it quit, and we'd take our mullet and go up into Harbor Beach, and there was that one bridge
Oh yeah.
where
with
the
big
giant jacks were.
Yeah.
And, we're parking on the side of someone's yard, and it's 6:30 in the morning, and we're excited, and
Yeah.
I know we were making noise, but we tried to not make as
The
much
jacks
noise.
probably made more noise.
Oh my gosh.
Crashing the mullet.
Yeah, 30-pound Jack Crevelle's coming out eating your mullet. I'm sure we were
Yeah.
doing some screaming, but
That was just
we were lucky to be able to experience that type of fishing,
100%.
and where we grew up.
And I don't think many people, if anybody, does that stuff today, because I don't know that you can even get to those locks with all the development in the houses.
I don't
and
think so.
everything.
No, not without, breaking a lot of rules,
Yeah.
getting in trouble.
Well, once we kind of got going, I ended up moving to the Keys. You've been in Lauderdale your whole life, and you've spent most of your time as a private boat captain, and you've done a lot of traveling up north. A lot of that northeast stuff you've done. I never had a chance to ride with you or do it. Always wanted to. You've gone through the canal a few times, I think.
Yeah, yep.
What was it like, going up to the Northeast doing that? Because you would go in the summer. I guess that was their season.
Yeah, the season's short in New England. It's Cold usually until the 4th of July.
Wow.
And sometimes the weather would get, I mean, I remember taking the boat up as early as late April and May sometimes. The weather would be beautiful, but you can't count on it. Some summers, every day you go, it's foggy. You can't see anything.
Yeah, you
And
really
then-
learned how to use the radar?
And then I learned from Cookie Murray, trust your electronics.
Yeah.
And that was hard to do. That I want to see where I'm going. I want to see what's around me. And never really felt 100% comfortable,
Yeah.
you know, running in the dark or running in the fog. Especially up there, there's a lot of boating activity.
Yeah.
And, it's a different world. Some years we wouldn't see any fog. So it kind of, the good days made up for the bad.
Yeah, I heard a lot of people talk about the fog up there being one of the worst things that they have.
Yeah.
I mean, weather's weather, but the fog, I guess, and it can stay for hours and hours, and
Yeah, you can't tell. You don't know. You could be in it for a mile or so, and then it clears up, and then you think you're good for the rest of the day, and man, 5 miles down the road, here it comes again.
yeah.
So you just don't know.
What would you do back then? Would you guys tuna fish, or you would just go offshore fishing for anything? Was there?
Most of the fishing up there is running offshore. Running to the canyons. Out of, like, say, Nantucket. There's not a lot of inshore fishing. So I mean, there's a lot of inshore fishing for other species, but
Right.
Not for. I mean, there's times up there in the summer where the Gulf Stream currents can push some warm water up in there. I mean, in the canyons off of Nantucket, even you'll have sargasso weed, you'll catch mahis, blue marlin, white marlin, tunas. Most of the fishing, most of the targeted fish up there are the tunas.
Yeah.
And there's still some this year especially has been excellent up there. Big eyes, bluefins, yellowfins.
But didn't
been
that
very
just start like the last few weeks? It really turned on good.
I was there a few weeks ago. A few weeks before that, I was there the first time, and it was red hot then, and it's been that way. It was like that way earlier.
Yeah.
And I have a good friend in a fish house in Gloucester, Jimmy Lunn, and Jimmy was telling me early in the summer that everybody that had a fishing rod was catching them.
Oh wow.
And the price was nothing. There
Yeah.
were so many fish caught, and then they close the season, and then they open it back up later on. But there's
Yeah.
a lot of good fishing this summer up there.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's like anywhere. It's a short window. You got to take advantage of it, and
Yep.
weather's the key up there because you got to run so far offshore. If it's blowing 25,
Yeah,
that's got to be a painful ride.
yeah. When I was there about a month ago on my first trip up there, I was in Chatham, and before I flew back, I went over to Nantucket to see some friends, and Paul Murray, who's a very, very good friend, was there, and I knew I wouldn't have a chance to see him until later next year sometime because when he's through fishing in Nantucket, him and his brother Cookie go to Canada,
Right.
and they do the bluefin fishing up there. So this was my only chance to really visit with him. So I went over for the day and had a nice visit with him. And him and his boss, they were all trying to talk me into staying the night. And they were going fishing the next day. And I said, I got to get back. I got to get back down to Florida and take care of what I have to. And I knew I should have stayed. And they went out the next day. They caught 3, like
Oh, wow.
a 4, a 5, and a 4, a 550, and a 1/6.
Wow.
And it's just, you look back and you have to think that whatever you have waiting for you is not that important.
Yeah.
When your friends say, they ask you to go fishing with them, you probably ought to go.
Well, that becomes a lot more valuable as we get older
Yeah.
because we're not promised tomorrow, and
No.
you hate missing out on anything. Have you been in the chair with one of those things? Have you caught one?
In Canada, yes.
Oh, the Canada fish.
Canada.
So that was a
Yeah.
big one.
Yeah, yeah, they're big fish up there. Just a really cool experience to do. My former boss Peter Deitch, we would fly up and fish with Cookie and Paul
Yeah.
in Canada for usually 4 or 5 days. We try to get up there every season. It's usually September to first or second week in October.
And you were in the chair with one.
Yeah.
How big
yeah.
a fish did you
We would
catch?
take turns.
Yeah.
We released everything.
Yeah.
Most of the fish up there are 600 plus,
Yeah. Wow.
and up to 1,000. We've had some really fun trips, and those guys they're great fishermen, and they're just a lot of fun to be around.
Yeah.
And the whole experience is just, they work real hard at it and they're real good at it, and it pays off. And it's a lot of fun.
Well, it's a specialized.
Yeah, it's
know,
a
thing that you're
beautiful.
doing.
Yeah, it's a beautiful area up there. It's. I hope it. I hope it lasts.
Yeah.
But
Well,
it's
been going for
pretty
a while.
cool.
Unlike
Yeah.
the Bahamas, let's talk about that a little bit. We're talking about bluefin tunas. You did that growing up. You would go to Cat Key and do the bluefin run, and it usually was I'm thinking like a June time, but there were conditions you had to have to make it all work, and everybody was so friendly, and everybody got along so nice.
For the most part, yeah. It was really May and June back then.
But a certain weather condition, you had to have a wind out of the
Southeast wind.
southeast wind.
Southeast wind. You had to have visibility.
Right, so
And,
sun.
Yeah, and a real calm southeast wind isn't going to push the fish, so you need, even a south wind is good.
Yeah.
But typically that time of year, everything was a southeast wind. Some days it would go south a little bit, or the wind would drop out. Then you go snapper fishing or do something else.
Yeah, you
But
wanted what, 15 to 20?
that would be ideal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Most of the time it was probably 10 to 15.
Yeah. And this is, so you're sight fishing for these tunas that are getting pushed on the bank from
Yep.
the south going north.
Yep, south of Cat Key.
And
They caught them all the way up the edge to, North Rock. They would see them, but most of the fishing, the bottom condition was better down there,
That's where the white sand was down there. So you could
right
really
on the
see 'em.
ledge. Yeah, and you'd see them come across that sand, and man, it was incredible. There was a lot of, it was tough fishing. You had to have a lot. There's no angler out there now that has the patience to do that like they did back then.
Right.
We would be there some years, 30 to 45 days straight.
Wow.
And we had a situation. We had the best boat to do it with, a 43 Merit. The owner had a yacht that he stayed on in Cat Key, so he was fine with it. You could do other things when you couldn't tuna fish,
Right.
and he didn't mind being in the salon reading a book, and we'd be out there looking for tunas all day, and never even turn on a school and throw a bait out. And he had the patience for it.
Yeah.
And most people, even back then, didn't. Nobody does now.
Yeah.
And
Well, do they even get a run in
they
in
still
Cat Key?
they still see fish. I think the reports that you get are people that happen to be there when the conditions are right, and
Yeah.
they'll see some fish. All that stuff has changed like anywhere else in the world. The patterns change a little bit. It may take so many years for it to come back to what it was.
Yeah.
But the weather conditions aren't exactly the same as it was back then. And the other thing is, if you had 20 boats over there on the edge looking for them, you would hear about a lot more fish being seen.
Right.
But if you've got 2 or 3 over there,
Yeah, it's
that's
hard
a
to
really
cover
big
enough
area.
ground.
That area goes all the way down to, Riding Rocks and south. And, boats used to be spread out.
They would get down at Riding Rocks and they would see them down there?
All up and down the edge. When you had the Cat Key guys, sometimes you'd have 8 or 10 boats fishing out of Cat Key.
Right.
And this wasn't like tournament or anything. They were there to do it. And there'd always be 5, 6 guys up in Bimini fishing it real hard. Kalex was one of them.
Yeah. Yeah, he talks
Yeah,
about
Danny Bear, a lot of the legends, you know, they were all there. You know, I was fortunate to be on the Cat Key side, and you know, I got to take Bill Steris's garbage out every day when we got in from fishing when I walked down the dock. But you know, it's really some great guys. Some, you know, a lot of, you know, Bobby Grant, excellent fisherman. Bobby Grant was there quite a bit.
So
caught a lot of
was the
fish.
Steris brothers like the guys that just had it figured out back
Yeah.
then? They were the kind of the ones to
Them,
watch.
them and Alan Merritt. They
Yeah.
fished more then than Alan Merritt did. Alan Merritt would come over as a, you know, he was more of a celebrity, you know, appearance for the tournament or something. But
Right.
the Steris brothers, Bill and George, they were real good.
Yeah, I met those
Yeah.
guys a few times in Chub Key fishing the billfish tournaments over there.
Yeah.
And I can remember they just whooped everybody's ass so bad
Yeah.
that it just wasn't even, we didn't see a blue marlin. They caught 4 and a couple of whites and a couple of sails.
Yeah. I think those guys intimidated a lot of people, and people would tend to try to do things that they normally wouldn't do as far as their bait rigging or changing their leaders, or they always knew that these guys had something going on.
Right. Exactly.
And you know, I think it messed them up. You know, they would do something they weren't normally how they would fish, and
Yeah.
they would try something instead of sticking to what they know.
Yeah, I'm sure
Because they were intimidated by guys
the reality
like
was probably super basic,
Yeah.
nothing fancy. You
Yeah.
know, they just got in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
The bait wasn't spinning, you know,
Yeah.
it was swimming, and all the little details
Oh, yeah.
that make it work, you know. But I remember those guys, and, you know, they were certainly what short time I got to, I never really got to know them, but to see them and watch what they were doing with Helen Grant
Yep.
was their female angler back then, and they just, holy cow! I can just remember how successful they were in those tournaments. And what tournament was in Cat Key? The tuna tournament, just one? The Cat Key tuna tournament.
Cat Key tuna tournament, and yeah,
Bimini
that was
didn't
pretty.
have one, did they?
I think they had a. I think early on they did, you know, back in the early '80s maybe, but you know, like even the Cat Key tournament, the Bimini guys could fish it.
Right.
You know, they could get it. And so it was still the same group of boats that were
Right.
typically over there fishing. The captain I fished with for years and years, Tommy Morrison, he was a Miami guy, and great fisherman, great friend, great you know, great person to live on a 43-foot Merritt with.
Right.
if you could put up with the cigarette smoke, but
Right.
it was you know, the way we fished, it opened my eyes. I learned a lot. I became real good friends with Paul Murray over there because we were there for such a long time together at the same time. So Paul and I were always, any chance we had, we would go off and, you know, go bottom fishing in a little boat or go do something else, go wakeboarding, and which is another story.
Yeah.
That's
Oh.
how he broke my neck, but
You broke your neck?
he broke my neck.
Really?
Yeah, pulling me on a wakeboard, but he won't admit it. But
Well,
it
I'm
was
sure
his
there's
fault.
a lot
It had
more.
nothing to do with what I did. But
Really?
yeah, so he.
I don't know. I've been around you a long time, and I can pretty much figure out how this came about.
Well, I learned a lot from those guys, fishing with them on days that, you know, I wasn't fishing on my
Sure.
boat.
Well, you were
And-
talking. I mean, you were around the crowd. I mean,
Yeah.
the best of the best back then.
And you know, I tried to absorb as much as I could, and it was really neat to see. You get so used to doing everything your way, and then you see better ways
Sure.
of doing it. And You know, and that was fascinating. That was, you know, and that goes on all the time.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know.
I know you just even with the stuff I do, you know, there's no magic. You just, you know, you have things that work. You get in the right place at the right time, recognize the condition. Like I'm sure those guys would go out there and they could tell pretty quick if it was the right time or the, you know, the right condition to be there. And I think the instincts like that with some of those guys is just incredible. You know,
Yeah.
some guys have it, some don't.
Yeah. And, you know, anybody can get lucky and just go out there and, you know, turn on a school and you know, you can lose the school if the sun goes behind a cloud and throw the bait out. And you're basically blind trolling down sea and one piles on it,
Yeah.
you know, and guy catches it.
Yeah.
So you don't know. It just, you have to be there to do it. That's
Yeah.
the thing. And it's a shame that, you know, that's changed so much. And I think with the boats and the anglers and the owners now, nobody would go do that anymore.
Yeah, probably not. I mean,
It's a real commitment, and the conditions just don't present itself like it did back then.
yeah. Well, and it seems like those tuna guys are going to do it up north, you know, like Cookie's going to, you know, to Canada and doing that stuff. And, you know, I'm sure the Bahamas have changed a lot where, you know, it's hard to go down there and put that investment
Yeah.
of time and money to, you know, hope that you get a wind direction or a condition. And, you know, they can go up there. I'm sure their season, they do very well consistently.
Yeah, and when they discovered the bluefins up off of Hatteras, that changed everything
Yeah,
too.
I remember that.
You know, that was boy.
Did you
that
get
was,
in on any of that?
No, I didn't. That was I had friends that went up there and got involved in it, and you know, that opened up a whole different world there.
Yeah.
And it really opened up people's eyes. And man, there was a lot of fish caught.
Yeah, I remember that. Is it
So-
still like that, you think?
They still not as good as it was when they first discovered it.
Yeah,
But the fish still come through there,
yeah.
and they still catch quite a few fish there, doing that. So
Wow.
you know, it's good to see that there's still a lot of the fish around. You know, is there as many as there used to be? I don't know, probably not. But you know, I think their patterns changed over time. And
Yeah, I would think. I mean, all that stuff is, and you got to change with it. You got to do it enough that you change with the changes
Yeah.
that happen. And, you know, if you haven't done it in 20 years to try to go do it again, like reinventing the wheel,
yeah,
be super hard. Well, you did some BBC tournaments
yeah.
over there at
Yeah.
one time.
Yeah, I used to fish all the BBCs.
When did you do that? That was 80s?
That would be, my memory's not that good, Randy. You should know that. I would say
I
it was
don't
had
know.
to be
You can remember some pretty interesting things at times.
late 80s and in the early 90s.
Okay, so I was there earlier in the 80s. You were there after me.
Yeah, maybe through the 90s.
Did you ever see any big blue marlin or catch
Yeah.
any big ones?
Yeah, you know what? As a matter of fact, a lot of the best marlin fishing was over in the Abacos, and people would they'd hook bluefin tunas over there.
Yeah,
You know,
Yeah.
out of the blue by mistake.
yeah,
And so those fish were even coming up on that side.
yeah, yeah. Oh,
But,
I'm sure. I mean, they
yeah.
got tails.
Yeah,
You know, they catch them in the Gulf. They catch
Yeah.
them there, and
yeah.
and
But- Real good blue marlin fishing there. A lot of, you know, saw a lot of big fish. You know, saw a lot of big fish get caught, and there was a lot of people doing it back then.
Oh, yeah.
And you didn't
Yeah.
have to have the best boat. You didn't have to have the best angler. You just had to hope your line didn't break.
yeah,
And you know, everything was lure fishing, so anybody could do it.
yeah,
And that was before everything changed with with baits and dredges and all that. And you know, those guys that are doing it now they're working a lot harder at it than what we did.
yeah.
You know,
well,
we were
and technology
lure fishing. Yeah.
come along. I mean, with the sonars, where they can
Oh yeah.
pick it up on the sonar screen and drive over to it, and
Yeah.
I mean, that's crazy.
Yep. Basically, the only thing, you know, we'd use our bottom machine for was
Mark
reading
bait.
the bottom to mark bait and make sure we were off the edge, or we were close to the edge before we threw them out. And it was it was a lot easier fishing than what they do now. So the
Did
guys
you
do it
ever
now.
see a really, really big one? Because they claim there was a 2,000-pound marlin over there.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I never heard that, but we saw fish. We'd have fish up that, you would say, "Oh my gosh, that thing had to be 700-800 pounds," And they caught plenty of fish like that. I remember one year, one of the BBC tournament, I think it was a BBC or the Penny Turtle tournament in Abaco. A guy caught. I remember the name of the boat, I think. But the guy caught a 730 blue marlin and didn't place.
Yeah, that's crazy.
There was quite a few big fish obviously caught, that year and in that tournament.
Interesting how some years the big ones just come through,
Yeah.
and other years there's no big ones.
Yeah, and we spent a lot of time fun fishing there when there weren't tournaments. And obviously, you'd have your best days just out there fun fishing. And
Right.
and speaking of Joe Thuma, Joe is my mate quite a bit over there, and we had some good days.
Yeah.
And we would break it up too a lot of times, and kind of like going back to the tuna fishing days where, you're dragging around lures all day. You gotta, if they're not biting, take a break.
Right.
And
Go mutton fishing or something?
yeah, so we started going inshore there off of Toulouse and bottom fishing, and the owner of the boat loved it.
Oh.
And he'd rather do that than go catch blue marlin, but almost. But it became such a competition between the owner of the boat and Joe, the mate, grouper fishing and snapper fishing on the bottom at lunchtime.
Oh, wow.
And that's what we would do to break it up during the day. And man, it became, a thing. Then
Yeah.
you had to do it. So if we weren't fishing a tournament every day, unless we were pretty far offshore, we'd go in so these guys could do battle with each other.
Nice.
So it was a lot of fun.
We got to tell our Bahama story, at least this one. But we had a trip. You called me up. You said you needed a mate. We're going to the Bahamas. We're going to end up in San Salvador, and the boss wants to catch tunas and blue marlin, yellowfin tunas. Like, okay. And the owner's wife had a cat, Siamese
boy.
cat. So we leave Fort Lauderdale. We get to Bimini. We clear. We kind of get everything ready to start the trek south. And the next morning we get up, cat's gone. Can't find the cat. So we're like, well, one less thing we got to worry about. But they were pretty persistent about we got to find the cat.
Adamant about finding that cat.
It's not in the boat.
The trip's off if we don't find the cat.
Oh yeah, we're going home
Yeah.
if we can't find the cat. So we're outside and we just hear a faint like little meow. And I think you figured it out right away. And the cat had fallen in the water, climbed up the exhaust pipe.
Yeah.
So the cat is up inside the boat in the exhaust pipe.
Meowing.
Meowing. Well, now we got to figure out how to get this cat out of the exhaust pipe.
And if you tried to reach in there and get him, he'd tear you apart.
I was going to chew your hand off.
Yeah.
So you had the idea to tell the boss, get a net. We're going to put a net out the exhaust pipe. We're going to fire this thing up. He's going to
Then
come
blow 'em out.
shooting out of there, and we'll catch him. Well, that's not what we did.
Well, his wife overheard that conversation.
This was her pride and joy. This no hair Siamese cat, I think it was.
Yeah, that was a weird cat.
So I forget how we figured out to get the cat out, but we get the cat out. And it's got bottom paint all over the thing. And it looked,
Soot,
it
exhaust
was.
soot.
So we leave Bimini to go to Nassau to go through the Exumas on our way to San Salvador. I'll bet she spent half the day cleaning the cat to get the cat all cleaned up.
Well, as a matter of fact, the cat still had bottom paint on it. After the San Sal trip,
No kidding.
I mean, at the end of the trip, they could not get all the bottom paint off that cat.
Yeah, I believe it.
Yeah.
Because that cat probably wigged out when it
Oh.
hit the water, and that was the first thing it could get up in, and
Yeah.
it still had water in the exhaust pipe. I don't think it,
Yeah.
got to where it was dry.
But maybe they just weren't using enough soap. I don't know. But that cat still had bottom
a
paint.
little acetone would have probably
Yeah.
helped a lot.
Some mineral spirits.
Something.
Yeah.
Exactly. And a a wool brush, something like that.
Yeah.
Like what you
Like
use for the barbecue cleaner.
Exactly.
One
Wire
of those.
brush.
Yeah, that would work.
Yeah.
We go through Nassau, and I guess we were going to go to the Exumas. Maybe we were going to Staniel or somewhere. We're going to spend the night and go across the next day to San Sal. So it started to get a little windy, and we're going along, and I went downstairs for something, and I opened the salon door, and there's the cat, sprawled out on all fours, flat face on the carpet. The tail was going up over its head like a scorpion would do, and it was seasick. Was throwing up. So I closed the salon door, and I went up to the bridge, and I go, Cap, they need you downstairs. So you went down and you cleaned up everything, got the cat straightened out, but the cat got seasick. And so anyways, we finally make it to San Salvador, and we start fishing. And kind of like, your grouper story, this guy wanted to anchor up every day and have lunch.
Yeah.
That was his thing. He didn't want to have lunch while the boat was moving. So we would go in, and we found a shallow spot, and we would leave at 9, and we would have lunch probably 11:30 or 12, and then go back out for a couple hours, and that was our day.
We didn't have to go very far to
No, that was the nice thing about
thing.
San Sal. You
Yeah.
were come out of the marina, you could put them out.
Yeah.
So we're having lunch, and we've got a cooler full of mackerel and mullet and everything, and I catch a barracuda. So I say to the guy, I want to put this out, see if we can catch a blue marlin on a natural bait, because they use bonefish and barracudas and natural baits in the Bahamas. And he got on me like, get that stinky thing out of the
we
cooler.
hadn't had a bite or nothing.
I know, we haven't caught one.
Yeah.
So, and we tried to do this yellowfin tuna thing with these little rods he had. That wasn't working out very well. And I don't know if we had caught the wahoo, but I think we caught a 100-pound wahoo while we were there on that trip.
We did. That place is known for big wahoos. Yeah.
Yeah.
We remember catching some
I know we
decent
had
ones.
a big one. I don't know if it was that day, but so that afternoon we go back out and I rig it up and I put it out, and he's in the salon, so he doesn't even know I put it out.
Well, he was changing the opera music. Remember the opera music?
Yeah, well, that didn't start till we got in at night. Thank God.
On the outside of the boat. I think they listened to it on the inside.
Well, yeah, we weren't inside, so we wouldn't. We wouldn't.
We didn't know.
So we're going along, and I'm up in the tower with you, and we're talking, and I remember you going, "Oh, look at that school of bait that just got up over there." And we started heading over there, and as I look up into the sky, it's a water spout. It's not a school of bait; it was a water spout that had the ocean all churned up. So we figured that out, and we're kind of laughing, and we turned away from it, and nothing happened. And I looked down, and there's a blue marlin on all 4 baits behind the boat.
Covered up.
2 on the flat line, 2 on the riggers. I'm like, oh my gosh, we're in them now. I shimmy down the tower leg, and I'm yelling for the boss to come out. He finally gets out. He's got one on the left short. He misses that one. He goes to the right short. He misses that one. The left rigger backlashed or something happened, and he's just beside himself that all these blue marlin got away. And the whole time, I'm sitting on the covering board in free spool, letting this marlin eat this barracuda.
The barracuda.
So I said, why don't you come over here and wind this one in? This was the
Lock it
barracuda.
up. Yeah.
And we caught like a, 400-pounder or whatever it was, and I'll never forget catching that barracuda, that blue marlin on a barracuda. And I took so much grief over that for doing it, but it worked.
It worked.
And we caught him, and it was the natural bait. So,
well, he hated you for the rest of the trip because of that.
you think he would have been happy? I thought outside the box, and we got mission accomplished. But you were talking about the opera music, so we would We had to stay in the hotel, the Riding Rock Inn.
Because the cat stayed in the cruise quarters.
Yeah, the cat had its own stateroom.
Yeah. So
we weren't allowed on the boat.
which was better for us.
Yeah, that was fine. Because the land crabs would, they were about the size of a.
Well, remember, we would take turns with sticks. We found some sticks, old branches.
Well,
and first it was to run them off. Then we were golfing them.
Yeah, well.
So we would have a contest at night.
I remember you had a magazine, some magazine, you rolled it up and you whacked one of these things and it ripped it out of your hand. I mean, these were serious land
Big
crabs.
ones.
They weren't little babies.
Yeah.
But at night, we'd have dinner, and as soon as we'd get done cleaning up, he'd turn that opera music on, and you and I were out of there so fast.
We'd bolt. We'd go look for land crabs on the way back to the room.
Well, we were going to find them whether we wanted to or not on the way.
They were there.
They were just in the way. And the guys eat those things in the Bahamas.
Yeah, the Bahamians love them.
Yeah. That's, I don't know.
You're never going to see me eat one.
No?
No, I'll stick with stone crab.
No, I hear you. Conch, stone crab. But that was a pretty interesting trip. And I have a picture of that fish at the back of the boat because I remember him yelling at me again for taking pictures. The swivel was at the rod tip. I wanted a few pictures.
Right,
so
right.
I was taking some pictures and got some great photos of that fish.
Yeah.
And but that was the only time I caught a blue marlin on a barracuda. And it came in handy because they weren't eating the other stuff.
Stunk up the bait box, but it was worth it.
Yeah, that was pretty funny.
Yeah.
But we've had some interesting trips, going to the Gulf, doing that stuff back in the day. And we got to give a shout out to our friend Ben Ferry.
Oh, yeah. Ben Ferry was old good friend. He was the mayor of Orange Beach, Alabama. And
unofficial mayor.
Yeah, well, there was only about 10 people that lived there when we were up there.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, I mean, there was nothing there.
Yeah. Have you been back there lately?
No, I haven't been through there in years and years. Ben asked me to come up every year. He wants me to come up next month in October to go red fishing. He's retired from offshore fishing. And he's an inshore redneck now, and that's all he likes to do. And he'd love it if you could come up there too. So if the two of us can do it, it's another one of those things.
Yeah,
we need to do it.
Yeah,
don't pass this one up.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting that we met him so long ago, and we still keep in touch.
Yep.
We may not talk to him for a couple of months, but. He'll send me
a year could go by.
He'll send me a text out of the blue. Hey,
Yep.
saw you on TV, or saw this or saw that, and it's just it's really nice the people that we've met along the way, and the friendships.
Yeah.
That you have with people, and you just never know where you're going to be, who you might run into, if you have a problem, and somebody, man, it's worth a lot.
It is. And if you really look back and think about, all your close friends you've pretty much known your whole life.
Yeah.
And it's a blessing to, be able to meet people like Ben and, Paul and Cookie Murray and, all these other guys that, you become friends with over the years, and you never know where you're going to run into each other at either.
Yeah.
So.
And when you do, it's like old home week.
Yeah, like nothing changed.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of it. Well, now you're, I guess you're not running many boats, just a few here and there that you've...
Randy, as you know, I was very fortunate in doing what I did. And I kind of grew up around Merritt's because of my uncle, Jim Donovan. He ran their 37s and 43s back in the day. And he's the one, he was like a father figure to me. And he's the one who gave me opportunities to really get involved in it. And it just so happened to be Merritt's. And those are the only boats I've ever really worked on for any amount of time.
Yeah.
And, obviously starting out as a mate and then, moving up and running your own, being a captain and, I've been very, very fortunate over the years. And, I was, my good friend Mike Ardito was running a 43 Merit that for some Texans that my uncle moved up from the fish boat and ran their yacht. And I was Mike's mate. And, we got to do a lot of fishing, all over. And that was a lot of fun. And, being able to just start out in that environment and stay in it your whole career, I think is, special. And, I've been blessed to work for like Peter and Alexa. We went through 2 Merits, a 60, and then we built the first 72, which was a coal molded boat. And I was older than they were, and which I'm older than most people now anyway, but they became my best friends.
Yeah.
And they eventually started a family and had 2 kids, and I got to watch their kids grow up. And their kids and my kids have become very close and good friends over the years. And as a matter of fact, I was just at their house on my way back from Cape Cod last week, and stopped by for the night and had dinner with them, and got to see everybody. So I've been very fortunate in those long-term jobs, which are unheard of anymore.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah. I was with those folks for, 17, 18 years. I'd still do anything in the world for them. And those days are over. You'll never see. I realized that I would not see that again, and I was not going to go out and try to find it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's why I, didn't really wasn't like dying to get back on a boat and start all over is the way I looked at it.
Oh yeah. Well, you are. With whoever the new person would be, and I look back at all the stuff you've done and how involved you've been at Merits specifically. And I've always said, I think Roy recruited you to do what you're doing now as, their top broker, sales guy at Merits, because you've built them, you've fixed them, you've ran them, probably as much as anybody. Roy would, I don't know, you might have a little bit on Roy because you've done so much hands-on using them and fishing them and everything. And Roy's very, very smart and obviously builds a phenomenal product. But you just fit that description so perfect. When somebody is interested in a boat, what you tell them is the real deal.
Yeah,
it's not sugar-coated or, something that's not a fact.
Well, first off, Roy has the best memory of anybody I ever met. I mean, I say this very seriously. He remembers detail and dates, and he reminds me of stuff all the time.
Wow.
I mean, it's incredible. And I'm fortunate he gave me the opportunity to get into the brokerage business because I know their boats and I know their customers. And
Exactly.
he told me, he's like, you're still going to be dealing with the same people.
Yeah.
And he says, you're at the boatyard every day anyway. So
Yeah.
It's worked out. Worked out real good. And I wound up taking care of a 70-foot Merit for a family that I've known for a long, long time, and have known their previous captains were all good friends of mine. And my son Matthew now works for them full time on the boat. So in between the brokerage, I still get to play with the boats a little bit, and it keeps the fire lit just enough.
Right.
But
Well, you keep your identity.
but it's just one of those unique circumstances,
Yeah.
I think. And,
No, when you told me, I remember years back when you were telling me you were going to get your license and you were going to, sell some boats, and I was really happy for you because nobody deserved that more than you, and nobody knew the boats and knew the business about Merits, how they're done and everything about them. I mean, you were that guy. It was the perfect setup. And, I think when you're dealing with the crowd of people that he deals with, the economy's good, the economy's bad, it's up and down, but I think he still probably has a waiting list for new boats.
He does. I mean, right now, if somebody wanted to order a boat now, you're seven years out, probably.
7 years.
7 years out.
And people are complaining about 2 or 3 for a freebie.
Yeah. So Roy's very, he's always, he always has people that, want a bigger boat.
Yeah.
And most of them are customers that he has now. And, when he asked me to get involved in it, it's something different. And I don't want to try to sell all the other boats that are out there, because I don't know that. And this gave me an opportunity to just deal with the stuff I know, or I wouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
I felt more comfortable dealing with what I know,
Well,
with his boats. And
you know it so well. Why would you want to sell something else?
right, I wouldn't do the people justice by, trying to just tell them what they wanted to hear about a different boat.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I think that worked out perfect. And, let's face it, as you said, we're not getting any younger, and, we're getting to a point in life where, just doing all that stuff, kind of been there, done that. Not that it's a bad thing, but, it's so hard to be compatible with people on boats, owners. We used to always say there was money and there was old money, and it was a difference in how everything worked.
yeah.
And a lot of that, I had it with the store family when I worked for them. And
Yeah, that's another one of those very, very rare situations.
I'll never have it again in my life.
Yeah.
And working for them was, it was a special time, with their kids and their grandkids, and like you say, you watch them grow up, and we had a great run. I think for 11 years we were together doing that. But like you say, that setup is just so few and far between. And the guys that have that job aren't quitting.
Yeah. Yep. It's not like it used to be at all, for sure. And I was, fortunate enough to have known, Bob Murray for many, many years. And, he's the king broker at Merritt's.
Right.
And he knows everybody, and, his client list was like a notebook. And Bob was real good at it. He, very smart. And when I talked to Bob about getting involved in this, he took me right in and taught me a lot.
Yeah.
And you think this would be easy, and it's not. There's a lot to it that most people don't understand, and everybody's a broker. Every boat captain out there has a broker's license.
Yeah.
But you really, to really commit yourself to it, is something that a lot of people can't do or want to do. You need to be able to do something else.
Yeah.
To keep money coming in, keep your contacts and all that. And Bob was very, very helpful, and he took me right in and taught me a lot. And there's a lot to learn. I'll never know as much as he knows about it, but I can always call him on the phone and ask him a question.
Yeah.
So,
well, and a lot of people, always thought a lot of you, and the ones that may not have had something nice to say wasn't one, you were going to hang out with or talk to in the first place.
No.
But the people that, you surrounded yourself with were always quality people, and I think given the opportunity with guys like him to, show you the ropes, and you're 100% right, because there is a lot to, putting a deal together, talking to people, not the hard sell, it's kind of a little art to it,
Yep.
to be good at it.
Right.
I mean, anybody can, beat somebody up and make them buy a boat, but, I didn't like that kind of experience with people.
Right.
And, I think it's the perfect fit, and you've got that going on now. And, it's really nice,
Yeah.
for the stuff he's doing. He's got a new boat coming out, that cat boat coming.
Yeah.
And he's just, God bless him. He's still
Yeah.
going, he's still doing it, and he must love what he does.
He is so dedicated to his life as a boat builder that, I'm around there all the time, when I'm at home. And, you go in there on a Saturday afternoon, if he's not playing tennis or the weather's bad or, his knees are bothering him or whatever, he's working on drawings for new boats. And for the last year, most of those drawings have been that catamaran boat.
Yeah, I know that really got his attention.
Once he got involved in that, he gave it his all. He really focused on it, and he's got a lot of really good designers working with him, and he's excited about it.
Yeah.
And of course, he doesn't have to advertise them. He doesn't have to tell everybody. Everybody knows he's doing it, and I hope they can build 10 of them, because I know the first 10 are people, they're like, already saying, well, number 6 is mine, and
Right.
number 8 is mine. And although,
Well, he is at the top of the food chain with
Yeah.
all of that stuff for sure. And I'm fortunate as well. I've known him a long time, and I could walk in there and he could be in his office, and every time he would stop what he's doing. And
he gave
we'd
you
have
a lot
nice-
of boat building advice
That
when
he
you were
did.
building your boat, and he's always been that way to other people.
Yeah.
He's always willing to share ideas.
He really is. He's not like some that are untouchable.
Yeah.
He's just a very friendly guy for the most part, and would tell you anything if you
Yeah.
asked him. And I remember when I was building the boat and I would see him, he would just look at me and he'd go, "You still at it? You haven't
Yeah.
given up yet?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, I got this problem that I can't make this work, and this doesn't look right. And within a few minutes, he would explain to me what the problem was, and I'd come home and fix it,
Work
and
on
it
it,
would work. And I was always very thankful for that, and appreciated, all of his advice. And it worked out good. The boat's still around today. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a wonderful thing.
It is. It is. And the guy that has it loves it. And
He really does.
Yep. Yep. It's a perfect fit.
It is. And it's down the street from there. It's
Yeah.
funny how
Yep.
they live pretty close.
Yeah.
Well, it's we were talking about growing up and doing all that stuff in the car and the fishing and the keys, and I can remember the stuff we did in Fort Lauderdale where the mullet run, when that mullet run used to come down the beach just in waves, and I talked to a guy today, Frank Catino, up in Sebastian area, and he says there's just no mullet that push down anymore like
Yeah.
they used to. And the stuff we got to see, I mean, just super fortunate to have seen that and done it, where we could literally drive down A1A, see the
Yeah.
school of mullet, pull off the side of the road right there, whether it was a parking area or not, go out there with our rods and go fishing. And living in the Keys, I was fortunate as well, because our big bonefish, the tarpon, the stuff here that I got to see.
You got here at the right time.
Exactly. I just have really had the opportunities to take in things that I don't think we'll ever see again.
Yeah, I wish my sons could experience some of the stuff that we did or saw. Not necessarily what we did, but what we saw. And, you hope it comes back.
Yeah, I don't,
Probably won't, but
it's so different. I mean, the fishery and the weather and everything else is different, but life is different.
yeah.
And that if we found those mullet, we didn't post it on Instagram, that we found them.
Yeah.
Not only we didn't say anything to anybody.
No.
And it was, that's what I mean by it's different. You can find something, keep it to yourself.
Yeah.
Or if you got a buddy, you can share it with him. But back then there was no network of really finding out what was going on unless one of your friends told you
Right.
what was going on.
Yeah.
And that's what's really gone.
That reminds me of, as soon as you said mullet run, this popped into my head, and I remember it like we did it yesterday. We were, night fishing, looking for bait, whatever. The finger mullet were all over Fort Lauderdale. And there was a dock in Harbor Beach on the north side.
Yeah, with the
There
big
was a
lady.
little marina.
Yep.
And there had to be 1 million ladyfish in there.
Yeah.
And they were all huge.
Oh yeah.
And they were eating finger mullet.
Yep.
And the whole surface of the water was just alive with finger mullet getting blown up by these huge ladyfish.
Yeah, they were like tarpon.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. And we don't know how many we caught, but it was just throw the net and dump it in the grass and put a finger mullet on and throw it out, and you're on to a giant ladyfish. And never saw it again.
Yeah.
Never
I don't think
saw
we
that
did.
happen again.
Yeah. We didn't even have a bait well. We just dumped them in the grass
Just
and grabbed
dumped them in the grass and threw them over.
Yeah.
Put a hook in it, throw it over. And, what made that happen that night, I have no idea, but that was really cool.
Yeah.
And, love to see it again, but no, we won't.
But that place, that was Harbor Beach.
Yeah.
But more toward like the Yankee Clipper.
Yeah.
That end of it.
Yeah, the north end.
Probably the tide or the moon, a strong tide pushed them in there.
Yeah, everything was right.
Exactly. It
Yeah.
was the right place at the right time. It was certainly pretty cool. Well, Greg, it was awesome catching up, talking about things, and
It's nice being down in the Keys and seeing you, and it's always a good place to come to.
we've known each other 46 years, and I don't think we've ever had a bad time.
Nah. I remember I was in high school working at Bill Boyd's Tackle,
Yep.
and you were coming in, you were building your own rods. And Bill Boyd's at the time had that room off to the side that they sold grips, blanks,
Yep.
corks, guides, threads, and they had their own rod wrappers that worked for them. Joanne.
Yeah.
And she was well known for her custom rods. That was the Bill Boyd
Yeah.
thing. And they had the epoxy room upstairs that they epoxy coated them. And you were building your own rods. You were couldn't have been over 14 then when I met you. And you were building rods that were better than the rods they were building at Boyd's. You were bringing them in to have epoxy coated.
Right. Because I didn't have a turner at home to epoxy them.
And that's when I started. That's when I met you. And then you brought another rod in. It was a beautiful rod. You probably still hate me for it. But I think it was a bridge rod for catching snook. And you brought it in, and I wrote the ticket up, wrote your name on it. And I was just starting to know you pretty good then. And sent the rod upstairs to get epoxy coated. And then before the end of the night, I went up there and got the ticket off the rod, and It said name on rod, Randy Towe.
Oh, you
And
put
I-
banana head on
I
it.
scratched it off and put banana head on it. So
I
you were all
remember
happy to
that.
get your rod back, and it said banana head on it.
Ah,
But those were fun times back then.
those were the days. I remember that.
But we developed a great relationship and could go, golly, the fishing we did and places we, went and stuff at that age, just, on foot or in a car. That was a
Priceless.
lot of fun.
I mean, it was just priceless. And we're still here.
Yeah. Yeah. Believe it or not.
We're not done yet.
No, not yet.
Well, it was great catching up, and we'll
Yep.
do it again.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. All right, everybody. Until next time. Banana head. God, I remember that. Like, what? Whose rod is this? Looks like mine.